All right, a new episode of Defining Human. Even though I said like 2 episodes ago that I'm not making this a series anymore, like I pretty sure I explained. I hopefully didn't explain that badly. The series is going to keep going. I'm just not going to try and make it every single episode. In this episode, as the title may or may not suggest, sometimes I try to make these one-word titles. I just say like philosophy dash one word explanation, but then sometimes I don't care and I just make it like 5. And then sometimes I make it super long, like that emotions one. That title was interesting. Anyway, so in this episode, I'll be going over Arrogance, which I think might just be the title. Is arrogance required to be human? Actually, one term, because I've been rereading the Ender Quintet. I don't know, the Orson Scott Card Enderverse, like not Shadow series. Anyways, it's Ender's Game, and then the books he wrote after that, which were Speaker for the Dead, Xenocide, Children of the Mind. And the thing is, in that series, it had a couple of words which I can't remember at this point. I think it was the hierarchy of otherness or something like that, or of other species. Anyways, there was 2 words in it which were notable because they were useful to this series, which were they were Ramen and Varelza, which were I guess translations of Nordic words. Anyways, they are Ramen is necessary for this because it's a being which is not your species but is also sentient. So I guess for the Nords that might have been like elves or something like that were sentient but not human, and that part of that was that they could live in peace. And then Varelza, which was the beast, which doesn't count as a human being, or it doesn't count as a Raman, and but it is a different species from a different planet. There was also Framlings, which is people but not from where you're from. So I guess that'd be like, I don't know how far it has to be. So it might just be like, you're not from Scandinavia. But then that also might be like, you're not from Earth, or you're not from the Sol system. But whatever. Oh yeah, by the way, that's space words are confusing, especially when you're not someone who studies it like me a lot. But I'm pretty sure the reason it's called solar system is because our sun, because, you know, just calling it the sun would get really confusing. If we ever became intergalactic as a species, someone would say, oh yeah, it's like the sun, or thinking of the sun or something like that. And it's like, okay, which one? So anyways, the actual name of our sun, I'm pretty sure, is Sol. So that's why they call it a solar system. But I'm not sure if ours is the only solar system and the other ones are just space systems or something like that. Or if ours is the solar system of Sol, which is the sun, which we all spin around, or if ours is the solar system and the other ones are like the Mannaroon system, if there's a theoretical sun called Mannaroon. In this video, I wanted to, already got sidetracked actually. Oh yeah, I should mention, I don't know if you can tell, but there's going to be a moderate amount of pauses because there's these little white things floating around which grow on certain trees in this area and which are awful for people like me who have seasonal allergies, even though they were supposed to have come in spring and I'm pretty sure it's summer by now, but whatever. So there's going to be pauses because I think that if I sneeze while recording this, it's going to sound like a gunshot since my mouth is so close to the microphone. So that's a thing. So anyways, I don't think I have to keep calling it human beings, although I might still, just by forgetting. But I think the thing I'm trying to define is how to be Raman. So a species which is intelligent, and a people. How to be a people. And people, part of being a Raman is that you're at least theoretically capable of living in peace, harmony, or at least not active war with other Raman. So yeah, it wouldn't be anyways, it wouldn't have to be constant war. There could be peace, even if there was constant war. It wouldn't have to be that way. The thing I like to think of is as Ramen and Varelsa, well, aside from that Ender's Game series, is Space Troopers or Super Troopers, something like that. Not the movie. The movie was just an excuse to, I think it was an 80s movie. Anyways, it was an excuse to, like, it was like Alien. It was an excuse to give well-known actors big guns. But the book was actually a lot more of a personal story, and it had 2 different alien races that I know of. In fact, I think there's more. And the thing to point out is that they were at least the, like, skinnies, I think they called them, the tall skinny people with houses and religions and all that, were all ramen. Even if they were at war, they were at least ramen. Now, I don't know if the bug species counts. I don't know if they count as ramen, because it's about, the whole story is about a soldier, so I don't actually know a soldier who's fighting in it, and it's more about him and his story. So I don't think they actually give much information about the species other than, like, we are at war with them, Earth, that is. So I don't know if the actual series or if the actual species is Ramen or Varelsa, because if they have to be at war with the human race by nature, I don't know if they count as Ramen, or maybe we don't, but I guess we do because we are ramen in comparison to the skinnies. Whatever. Anyways, so I am 6 minutes into this video now, starting with the topic. I've done worse before. So what I'm trying to figure out is arrogance required to be ramen? I guess, well, anyways, I wrote down a couple of questions, and more or less I'll just answer them. They have different assumptions. The first one's assumption is, if yes, so if arrogance is required, do you need to believe in your superiority of your individual self or your species superiority over other species? That's an interesting one. I should note, I wrote this down like a week and a half ago, so it's not exactly new to me, but that's good because I can think of my responses as I say them. Or I can think of I don't know. I don't think pre-written responses are exactly all that good. Although sometimes very highly scripted and planned out videos are great, but I don't know. It's more authentic this way. So not to say I'm winging it. I do have a full paper with all the questions pre-written. I just haven't, I'm just winging my answers, not the thought processes behind them, just trying to articulate them by winging it. So I think what I meant by do you need superiority is, do you need to believe yourself to be better than others? Do you need to believe, it's sort of in the private thoughts of every individual. They think like, oh, I could be king, I could be superhero, I could be this, I could be that great thing. I think I touched on this in the last philosophy, where I talked about the desire to leave something behind. Even though, well, depending on your theology, it won't matter to you if you do or don't. So I guess in this I was thinking, well, first of all, do you necessarily have to believe you're better? And I don't think so. I think it's conceivable that there could be some sort of hive mind system in which individuals don't believe themselves better. But I think in that situation, you would have to have the second part, which is that you would have to believe your group or species seniority over other groups or species. So in this case, that could be local town, that could be region of city, or that could be country, or that could be planet, or that could be species. In the case that planet isn't species. The question here is, in the case of a hive mind, does that hive mind, well, first of all, in the case of a hive mind, or at least of a very, very collective Raman species. Do they, are they, is the hive or is the collective the entire species, or is it one group, and there's maybe 100 hives which banded together at some point to create intergalactic travel? I don't know. In that point, in that system, would it be, do the different groups, even if they don't actually fight each other, do they have to believe themselves superior? Or even if the collective is the whole species, do they have to believe their species superior? And I think the answer to this case, it's a rare one, folks. We actually get a yes. I think so, because it comes back down to that, do individuals have to desire to reproduce or to continue? From the last one. I don't think individuals do, but I think the species has to have a collective will to do so. Aside from the fact that nature just, this actually came from Orson Scott Card's Endergame again, but Endergame, it said nature cannot produce a species which doesn't have the will to keep itself alive, or something like that. It's paraphrasing anyways. And I think that's true. We would have never started picking up rocks and making crude tools out of them if we didn't think that we deserved to live more than the animals which were going to be smashed and cut with those crude rock tools. So yeah, or at least we wouldn't have continued once we were at least in the Neanderthal state and had basic morality. But I think that the thing is, the species has to have this arrogance, this belief that they are better, and in being better, deserve and need to continue on. Alright, so I might have screwed up this video a little bit because I kind of answered it and skipped the next two questions, which were talking about no. But if I asked them now, their questions would be more or less, well, I would more or less say something along the lines of, oh, well, that brings up a good point, further proving my point that, yes, we do need it as a species, but not as individuals. For instance, one of the, sub-questions anyways, was, what can be gained by viewing oneself as neutral or less than another group or species? And in that would bring up the point of, it would bring up whether or not a species which, it would once again bring up that a species which did not value itself as more valuable than other species couldn't continue itself. So they just have to. Arrogance has to be there. And that actually answers my final question, so I guess this is a short video. Which is kind of ironic considering I think I've just made like 45 minutes of vlogs. And then I make 15 minutes of philosophy. The vlogs are supposed to be the short ones. Anyways, the final question is this a necessary lie? Which, of course, is true in that I'm going to assume that we shouldn't consider valuing species. Because naturally, being that I am one species and not all species or neutral of species, I couldn't come to an objective standpoint. And I don't think an objective standpoint is possible, because even if you did it with things like computers, pure facts, you're not going to get the actual species, because then you don't take into consideration things like culture. And even if you did, I don't know, computers don't really seem to value things well. So they might say like, oh, species A has 10 million pieces of art that they have saved after the point when they started saving art. Which might seem like a lot, but it's probably not much if you consider how many like little things there are on websites like DeviantArt and all that. And species B has 11 million. And then in all other ways, mathematically, they're basically equal. So we're going to say species B is objectively better because they have more. But that's not true, because you have also got to consider things like quality. And not just quality, but subjective quality. So even species B paintings might be generally considered of higher quality, but species A might consider it more about individual likings of the painting. So it doesn't matter if 99% of the people who see that painting hate it. As long as 1% actually loves it, species B considers it a good painting. As to where species A is more about the general quality overall. How many, so 65% like it, and 40% are neutral to it, and 5% dislike it. That is considered the greatest painting of all time, even though nobody really feels particularly strong about it. So I think the computer in that situation would still value species B, because it says, well, they don't have many great paintings, but they have a whole lot of pretty good ones. Anyway, so I don't think it's fair, or there might be a way to grade species upon each other, but I can't think of it, and if it exists, I think it would be controversial at best. So this is probably a lie, that one species is better than the other, but I think it's a necessary lie. I think that a species has to believe itself to be better, at least the species, if not the group, because think of the world now. Think of your country. Your country doesn't, I don't care what country it is. I'm thinking of mine. We don't actually need to survive. Think of your country's enemy, or whatever country you consider to be your country's enemy, or your people's enemy. Think of that group. If they ruled the world, the human race would be fine. At least as a species, we would be fine. So that's my point here. We don't act, and then if you consider that, if the enemy of humanity, if the skinnies or whatever, or if the bug things from Super Troopers or Space Troopers or something like that, if those things conquered the human race, then what would, if they conquered the human race, the overall Milky Way's ability to have intelligent beings which build things for the future would be fine. There wouldn't be any setbacks. So I guess that's that. Or it would just be like one animal. It would just be like one group conquering another. So it's a false lie. Species have to believe they're better than each other in order to continue existing, at least as a species scale. But they don't actually have to be, and I don't think they can be. Just because as long as one survives, they should be okay. Although, to be fair, it might require 100 species that we're going to discover, or will discover us, in the next million years in order to figure out a way to, like, survive heat death. But who knows? If that is the proper thing to do. But that's not... Actually, I was about to say this isn't philosophy, but it is. But that's a different philosophy, whether or not surviving the death of the universe is something that should be done, even if it could. Yeah, so this is philosophy, which means enjoy the turkeys.